With the NFL Combine coming to a conclusion, there's been some quarterbacks that have been starting to rise up, and there's certain quarterbacks that it feels like their stock is beginning to fall, and one of those is Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders. Now, Shador Sanders did not participate in any of the drills when it comes to throwing, 40-yard dash, nothing like that. But he did have multiple different interviews with teams, and he also spoke on the Combine where he came out and he sounded very confident. He went out there and emphasized that if a franchise isn't looking to change the culture, then they should not draft them, and that quote-unquote history repeats itself. And he claimed that he has a track record of turning around football programs. So essentially he's saying that he's pretty confident that he can step in the role of a franchise quarterback and turn around the culture of a franchise. And not gonna lie, when I first heard this, I didn't really have a big problem with it. I don't mind my quarterback saying confident things like that. And ultimately, from a mindset standpoint, I would love for my quarterback to have that type of confidence and that type of mindset. Now, some may view it as, coming off, being too cocky, too arrogant, but I feel like at the quarterback position, you do got to have a little bit of cockiness and arrogance to a sense. Now, obviously, you can't be too much. You can't be a complete asshole. You also got to know when to be humble, when to be critical of yourself, be a true leader in that sense. But recently, something has surfaced from Todd McShay based on what he has heard from multiple different teams that met with Shedeur Sanders at the Combine. Take a listen right here.
The two people that I spoke to, teams in the top 10 drafting that need a quarterback, the two people that I spoke to in these positions left the meeting feeling like Shedeur Sanders was not overly concerned with what they thought of him. They had a 15-minute meeting with him, and when they were done, they both said in different ways, different words, that they did not feel like Shedeur Sanders cared all that much about what that organization thought of him. One said that it wasn't a professional approach. The other person I talked to said he wasn't taking it seriously at all.
Now, this is a very interesting statement by Todd McShay. It's important to note that he specified that it was two teams in the top 10, and Shedeur Sanders came off like he didn't really care of what they thought about him. So something like this, you could definitely make the argument that if this is true, there's a good chance that Shedeur Sanders' draft stock may fall down. And it's pretty crazy because in the regular season, especially when the Raiders had the #1 overall pick, there was a lot of talk and buzz about Shedeur Sanders potentially being the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft. And when the Raiders won those 2 games late in the season, they dropped all the way to the #6 overall pick. A lot of us kind of worried that this put us out of the reach to get a top 2 quarterback in the NFL draft, especially with multiple teams that need a quarterback being ahead of us. Tennessee Titans, Cleveland Browns, New York Giants are all teams that you could argue need a quarterback and that they very likely could draft one. So that's where a lot of people thought that if you want Shedeur Sanders to be a Raider, you may have to trade up for him. But at this point, it definitely seems like there's a good chance Shedeur Sanders may fall on the draft board. There's a good chance he may land to the #6 overall pick, where the Raiders then will have to make the decision on whether or not they want to select him or if they're going to pass on him. And I will say, if the Raiders don't select him at 6, there's a good chance he could potentially fall into the 20s. To me, it would just depend on if the New York Jets were willing to select him. But based on what Todd McShay said, there's a couple different ways you can look at this. The first way you can look at this is that this is a major red flag from Shedeur Sanders. This shows a lack of maturity, him being too arrogant, cocky, and it could generally give you a sense that from a character standpoint, he may not be the best leader. Or another way you could look at it is Shedeur Sanders is being strategic with these comments, with the way he handled those meetings with those select teams. Now, it would be interesting to know which teams those were, but just speculating, I definitely would not be shocked if one of those teams were the Cleveland Browns, because we all know his father, Deion Sanders, has made it clear that he's going to be heavily involved in the decision-making process of his son, which, look, I totally understand that. At the end of the day, that's his father. He's gone through the same situations. So I don't think it's a bad thing that Shedeur Sanders is taking some advice from his pops on how to handle the draft. So it definitely could be a possibility that he's trying to force his way to a certain team. And a lot of people are speculating that could be the Raiders. Now, it's hard to know exactly which teams were the ones that felt this type of way about Shedeur, but I would not be shocked if it was the Cleveland Browns and very possibly the Tennessee Titans, which, you know, in a scenario like that, that would almost guarantee Shedeur Sanders is going to fall to 3. And from there, it just depends on what the New York Giants are going to think about Shedeur Sanders. Now, the only thing that concerns me about this is that McShay mentions the fact that those teams felt like Shedeur Sanders was unprofessional. And I don't really like that at all. I understand there's certain destinations that he'd rather not go to, and he may be trying to force himself to go to certain situations, but I still think there's a level of class and a level of professionalism that you have to handle these situations. And according to those teams, they felt like Shedeur Sanders was not professional, so that's my only concern, especially if you're going to be the leader, the franchise quarterback. You're essentially the CEO of the football team. It takes more than just good football play. You also have to carry yourself a certain way. So that's one thing I don't really love about this situation. Now, ultimately, I definitely think Shedeur Sanders is trying to force his way to the Las Vegas Raiders. But at the same time, he might also be 100% fine with going to the New York Giants. And at that point, like I said, it just depends on how New York feels about him. I mean, there's a lot of fans and people in the New York Giants media that really find it hard that they're going to select a guy like Shedeur Sanders. Their history typically shows that they don't really go that route, and that's going to be the biggest X factor right there. If by the 3rd overall pick Shedeur Sanders is not selected, to me it's almost going to be a guarantee that he will fall to us at 6. And at that point, would he be a good fit for the Raiders? I mean, from a stylistic standpoint, I think he definitely could work. He's more of a traditional pocket passer style quarterback. And I think a guy like Tom Brady, who is going to be heavily involved in the decision-making process when it comes to selecting a quarterback, I think he would prefer these pocket passer style quarterbacks. But he's also a guy that can use his legs, and he's a quarterback that is no stranger to the media. He is used to the cameras and microphone being on him at all times. He's used to the spotlight, which I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't give Shedeur Sanders a lot of credit. I see a lot of people criticizing him, claiming that he's only a 1st-round pick due to nepotism, that if it wasn't for his dad, he would not be drafted very high. You can look at it from that standpoint, but I think you should also look at it from the standpoint of a guy like Shedeur Sanders. It's not easy to follow the footsteps of a Hall of Fame football player like his father was, to have all that hype, pressure, and expectations put on you. Not everybody can handle that, and not everybody can handle being put on the spotlight so early on in your career. And say what you want about him, but in 2 different occasions in college football, he was able to turn around a college football program. The University of Colorado was a terrible football program before he got there. And by the time he left that program, they were 9-3, made a bowl game. So to me, that definitely was impressive. But it definitely seems like with these comments, Shedeur Sanders is going to try to work his way to a certain destination. We'll just have to see whether or not it pays off for him, though, because I will say, if he fell to us at 6 and the Raiders don't select him, there could be a good chance he falls and slips in the 1st round. And in a situation like that, he may regret handling these meetings the way he did. But Raider Nation, I definitely want to get your guys' feedback in the comment section down below. What do you think about Todd McShay's comments on Shedeur Sanders? Do you think he's trying to force his way to the Raiders? Do you think this is a major red flag? Let me know in that comment section down below. But with that being said, Raider Nation, that is all I have for you guys in today's video. Anybody that is new to the channel, you guys love Raider related content just like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next one.